In the last few steps, we played around a lot with this Spring framework. In this step, let's review some of the important terminology that is typically used along with Spring framework. Add component. When you add component to a class, an instance of the class will be managed by the Spring framework. We have used add component extensively on the Game Runner class, on Mario Game class, on all the other game classes, and we used add component on your business class and the dependencies of the business class as well. Add component is one of the most important annotations in Spring framework. Whenever you add component, if the specific class is under component scan, an instance of that specific class, a Spring Bean, will be created and it will be managed by Spring framework. Number 2, dependency. Earlier, we saw that the Game Runner needs Gaming Console IMPL, a implementation of Gaming Console, either Mario or Super Contra or Pac-Man. So, Gaming Console implementation, for example, Mario Game, is a dependency of Game Runner. Component scan. Spring needs to find out where the components are present. How do you tell Spring framework where to search? That's where we define a component scan. How do you do a component scan definition? We would add a add component scan annotation. In this add component scan, you can specify package name explicitly. So over here we are specifying com.in 28 minutes. And what this would do is it would search com in 28 minutes and all its sub packages for components. If you add component without having a package name, then the current package and the sub packages will be scanned for packages. So examples.a1 and all its sub packages will be scanned for packages by the Spring framework. Dependency injection. What is Spring framework doing in here when I run an application? The first thing it would do is to do a component scan. It will try and locate all the components. It will identify what are the dependencies for these components and it would try and wire them together. This entire process is what is called dependency injection. Identifying beans, identifying the dependencies and wiring them together. This is what is called dependency injection. There is one more terminology which is associated with dependency injection. It is called IOC, inversion of control. Why is it called inversion of control? Let's go back to the earlier project which we created. So this was the first project which we created, Learn Spring Framework 01. And when we started off, this is the code we wrote. Var game is equal to new Pac-Man game. Var game runner is equal to new game runner, and we passed in the game object. What we are doing in here is writing code for object creation, and wiring of dependencies. So we were in control. The programmer was in control in here. The programmer was explicitly writing code to create objects and wire the dependencies. However, in our new gaming app launcher application, who is in control? All that the programmer is doing is to define a component scan and define a few annotations, add component on Mario Game and add component on the Game Runner class. The actual work of creating the objects, wiring them together, is being done by Spring framework. So the control is shifting from programmer or writing explicit code to Spring framework. And that's why this is also called inversion of control, IOC, inversion of control. Next, Spring Beans. Any object that is managed by Spring framework is called a Spring Bean. IOC container, inversion of control, container. This is the component in Spring framework which manages the life cycle of beans and dependencies. We talked about the two types, application context and bean factory. Application context provides you with a lot of complex features, whereas bean factory provides you with simpler features. However, bean factory is rarely used. In my 20 years of experience playing with Spring framework, I have always made use of application context. The last terminology is auto wiring. The process of wiring in the dependencies for a Spring Bean is what is called auto wiring. Whenever Spring looks at a specific bean, it tries and identifies what are the dependencies it would need. For example, if you look at the Game Runner, when Spring looks at this class, it sees that it has a constructor and therefore this one is a dependency. It needs a game object. When Spring sees your business class, it sees that there's a constructor in here and it needs these two dependencies, and it tries to find them and it tries to auto wire them in through constructor injection. This is what is called auto wiring. As you can see in here, all these terminology are very, very closely related to each other. I'm sure you're having a wonderful time, and I'll see you in the next step.